Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Bolte's podcast. I'm Alex and I'll be talking about what I found interesting this past week. Two big stories about Overwatch were released. The first being that Overwatch competitive mode is limiting teams to one of each character, so you don't have to worry about being in a team of all mercies, something that I was totally a part of. The second being that a new character was announced in the form of a healing sniper named Ana. At least in the corners of the internet I reside in, I saw that the team balancing got a lot more conversations than the character announcement, but maybe that shouldn't be surprising. There isn't much to do in the game besides compete, and you could easily argue that this balance adjustment is going to affect a lot more players than a new character. But Ana's pretty cool. She's got a pretty cool arsenal. She can use long-range darts to either heal her allies, do ongoing damage to enemies, or put an enemy to sleep. She also has access to what's called her biotic grenade, which, in a small area of effect, heals her allies and damages her opponents. But it doesn't stop there. This grenade also increases all healing received by allies, as well as prevents the enemy from healing at all. Lastly, and this typically is the game changer, her ultimate is called Nano Boost and can be used on one ally to essentially turn them into a superhuman. Next up, and surprising everyone, Nintendo this week announced the NES Classic Edition. Releasing November 11th at the price point of $60, this mini version of the console classic will plug directly into your TV through an HDMI port, as well as come with 30 pre-installed games. Besides including the obvious classics like Super Mario Bros., Donkey Kong, and The Legend of Zelda, I'm pretty impressed with Nintendo's ability to get third-party support, including series like Castlevania, Final Fantasy, and Mega Man. Like any modern emulator, the mini console will also allow you to use save states. And I'll tell you, I just beat Zelda 2 this week, and it would not have been possible without save states. I mean, these games, they were built to be tough, man. But I think the whole classic console idea is pretty interesting. I mean, a lot of these old games are still fun multiplayer experiences, so buying this console, gathering a few buddies, you're gonna have a pretty good night ahead of you. And I really hope they turn this into a type of series. I mean, it's not hard to imagine the same thing to the SNES, but can you imagine how cool it would be to have an N64 Classic Edition? Speaking of Nintendo, I just want to briefly talk about Pokemon Go and how it's exploded. Nintendo's shares have shot up 86% in the past week, and I'm not a stock guy, but even I know that's pretty good. And it really raises the question amongst fans and investors is just how good Nintendo's IPs are, and are they being restrained by the current consoles they're on? There's no doubt that Pokemon Go is successful because it's a Pokemon game, but I want to argue that what's pushing it above and beyond is its AR and mapping integration. So imagine if Nintendo picked up the Pokemon series and moved it entirely to the mobile market. Would a straight up turn-based RPG, like the main series, be as successful as Pokemon Go? I have a hard time believing it. I think that Pokemon Go is novel because of its technology, and that's the reason it's become a cultural phenomenon. But if the question was, would the main series be more successful on mobile? Well, probably so. But it would be sad to see the games watered down to fit on phones. But I'm not saying this is any reason to get all doom and gloom. If that is the future, well, it's not going to be for a while. What is coming soon, though, is the long-awaited No Man's Sky. While the August 6th release date isn't exactly a mystery, Hello Games has put out the first of a series of videos detailing what exactly you'll be doing amongst the game's 18 quintillion planets. And I just want to take a moment and talk about how big of a number that is. We all have a concept of a billion, right? Well, now imagine a billion billions. That's 1 quintillion. The number of planets in No Man's Sky is 18 of those. So that's a pretty big number. But it's exactly that big number that's caused a lot of people looking forward to the game to be a little concerned. What exactly do you do amongst these planets, and how could it possibly remain interesting? That is the type of concern that this video series is meant to address. Hello Games describes 4 key pillars that make up No Man's Sky: explore, trade, fight, and survive. And each trailer is meant to delve into one of these topics. I think it's a great idea. There's a lot of misunderstandings about No Man's Sky. But after watching the Explore trailer, the first one in the series, I could already see that it wasn't going to help these misconceptions. The video shows off lush landscapes full of wildlife and greenery, but if you've been following the statistics, that only represents about 1% of the planets out there. It fails to mention that about 90% of the planets will be pretty barren. By advertising the game like this, I worry about what the average player's expectations are going to be about the game. No Man's Sky is significant because of what it accomplishes. It's not going to be the type of adventure game that straps you to your seat until you're finished. It sounds like the perfect game for me, but I'm not looking forward to reading the comments online about it. In niche gaming news, Danganronpa 3 premiered on my birthday, actually. If you haven't heard about Danganronpa, don't worry, you're not alone. It's this niche visual novel with class trial gameplay, and I played it on the Vita, but it's actually available on Steam, too. Now, I'm kind of stretching what this podcast is about, because Danganronpa 3 is actually an anime. But I enjoy this series too much to not talk about it. Now, I'm sure I was amongst a lot of fans who were confused about the switch of mediums, but after viewing the first 2 episodes, I'm totally impressed. The animation is great, but what's more interesting is how the anime is set up. It's actually split into 2 arcs. One is set after the second game, and the other is set between the first and the second. And fortunately, these 2 arcs are not isolated events. They're actually interwoven with each other, but I can't really talk much more about what I like because of spoilers, so consider this a recommendation to play the series, dudes. On to the final topic, what have I been playing this past week? As I mentioned earlier, I beat Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, and I thought it was pretty great. So now I've moved on to A Link to the Past, and it's blowing my mind. So much expression is implemented into the game that I would say that a lot of the personality and aesthetic that we associate with the Legend of Zelda series first started here. And that about wraps up everything I have to say. Hope you had a good time. I hope I see you next week, and thanks for listening.